To those you serve, your life means nothing!
Raul Menendez is one of the coldest motherfuckers in the series, and let me tell you why. In my Black Ops 1 video, I said the overall mediocrity of that game's villains must have made Treyarch try extra hard in Black Ops 2, and I've decided to qualify this statement. Trust me, Dragovich McLimpdick over there has nothing on this fine specimen. Let's compare the first actual meeting we get with these characters. In the jungles of Angola, we get the drop on Menendez, and his attitude toward us isn't even fearful. He's looking at us like dirt. He's got this smug grin on his face throughout the entire thing. Dragovich is also pretty smug when you meet him, but I'll give you 3 seconds to spot the difference. Yeah, it's the fucking gun, obviously. It's easy to gloat when your enemy is catatonic on the ground, so Dragovich's character has no distinguishing traits in his introductory scene. We clearly have the upper hand on Menendez, but his sheer lack of fucks to give keeps the scene tense and immediately adds intrigue to his character. But maybe this is a bit hasty. How did we even get here? Well, okay, explaining this is kinda awkward since Black Ops 2 jumps between the 1980s and the oh-so-distant year of 2025. The player first learns of Menendez in the intro cutscene of the game, where an older Menendez visits a really older Frank Woods, who, by the way, survived Black Ops 1. Surprise!
All he said was, mi hermana. That's Spanish for sister, dipshit.
Woods' account implies a long personal history between these two that will eventually be explained, but let's focus on the beginning. The year is 1986. Raul Menendez is a Nicaraguan gunrunner who's been trading with the Soviets, but that's not even remotely why Alex Mason is here. After the grueling events of Black Ops 1, Mason quit the military and started a family in Alaska. But one day, our old pal Hudson showed up. Woods and his squad had been poking around Menendez's operation in Angola, but they got themselves captured. The CIA decided it was way too risky to attempt a rescue mission, so Hudson turned to Mason for help. Mason had no choice but to answer the call. This wasn't about war, it was about saving a friend. We eventually recover Woods, who's in really bad shape, but you know.
You can't kill me!
There's a problem though. Because Mason's aircraft curse has struck again, we have no way out. So the gang creeps around until Mason stumbles upon a radio tower where you can call for extraction. And that brings us here. I'll be honest, this entire sequence is fucking Kino. In this one scene, Menendez shows more charisma and grit than Dragovich does in his whole game. Mason thinks he's safe with Menendez as a human shield, but this couldn't be further from the truth.
Los americanos no saben nada sobre la lealtad. Quizás nosotros deberíamos demostrar.
You see, it's hard to pin this guy down. Mason's control of the situation dwindles by the second. With cunning and ruthlessness, Menendez turns a hostage situation into a fight for survival, which he almost wins. Mason makes it out alive, and obviously Menendez does too, because we don't want a time paradox on our hands.
You've created a time paradox. You're Snake. You can't go changing the future like that.
But even if we weren't jumping around the timeline, you'd have to suspect something is up, because that was way too cool of an action scene to waste on a throwaway character. Most of the CQC cutscenes in Call of Duty are either quick kills against nameless mooks or a final climactic slugfest with the game's big bad. But this felt a bit different. Scrappy, quick, dynamic. As I said, fucking Kino. So Team Mason eventually escapes Angola. You may notice that Alex Mason isn't here to tell this story, and that's because he is, in fact, dead. But who is here is Alex's son, David, also known as Section. He's the protagonist of Black Ops 2 and the main player character for the 2025 portion of the game. Woods knows quite a lot about Menendez. He's done stints as a crime lord and Soviet collaborator, but in the modern era he's become something even more monstrous. A social media influencer. Yeah, Menendez eventually launched a group called Cortes Dia, an online anti-capitalist movement which is now 2 billion members strong. I love how they kind of throw that out there like 2 billion isn't a fucking crazy number. Like, who's his social media manager? Or does he just sit there and make all of his clickbait YouTube thumbnails by himself?
I recreated Willy Wonka's chocolate factory in real life. And
I'm one step ahead of him.
The long and short of it is, he has grown very powerful and very influential, and all of it is in service of making his enemies pay. He is, and I quote,
the most dangerous terrorist since Osama bin Laden.
He's cunning, manipulative, and remorseless. The guy doesn't believe in half measures. He'll get his way even if it takes half his life to prepare for it. I think it's really neat that Menendez has a personal impact on all the characters in the game. Even Section has some confusing Menendez-related flashbacks when his head gets thwacked hard enough.
Come on, go suffer with me.
Treyarch are really determined to give us perspective on Menendez, as throughout the game his past is brought up a few times. When Menendez was a child, Nicaragua was in the middle of a brutal revolutionary war, and he was growing up in a country ravaged by the US-backed Contras. This got even worse when in 1972 the country was rocked by a massive earthquake that left his family destitute. Only a year later, his sister Josefina was badly injured and disfigured in a fire. The fire was no accident. Its American owner torched it for insurance money and got $11,000 out of it.
$11,000, that was the value they placed on her life.
That's when he started the cartel with his dad, until the CIA grew nervous and took out old Papa Menendez. This prompted a career change. Now he had a goal deeper than material wealth. He started dealing weapons and getting cozy with America's enemies. Apart from a few minor setbacks, he stayed pretty quiet over the next few decades, building up funds, resources, and followers. Treyarch did a very good job in making sure Menendez's motives were understandable, and that's all it is. Not right, not just, understandable. There's no question that he's a ruthless, despicable villain, but the circumstances that formed him are clear and well explained. But we don't have the whole picture yet. What links Menendez to Woods specifically? Or Section? Does he hold that much of a grudge towards Alex Mason for taking his eye out that he'd go after everyone he loves? Well, maybe that's a factor, but by no means is it the primary reason. The CIA eventually tracked down Menendez to his compound in Nicaragua and called up the president of Panama, Manuel Noriega, for a joint operation to capture Menendez alive. This is the same man who put Woods through a whole lot of hell, so if it were up to him...
Let's smoke this bastard.
Then, unexpectedly, we transition to Menendez's point of view. We get to be in his shoes for a fleeting moment of peace, and it's not often a Call of Duty game has scenes like this. In his sister Josefina's bedroom, Raul isn't a criminal or a warlord. He's just a man in quiet contemplation, doing his best for the only person he has left. Of course, this is short-lived. The Panamanian soldiers storm the room, and they have no intention of killing him, of course, but then they notice Josefina. Raul, up to this point, had an air of cold-blooded confidence. Nothing seemed to really get to him, but as a soldier grabs Josefina and throws her into the cabinet, Raul sees red. He exacts vengeance upon this one man, but the Panamanians retake control quickly. In his rage, there is no reasoning with him, so they have no choice but to sedate him. And when he comes to, he's outside his compound, face to face with Manuel Noriega, who never actually had any loyalty towards the Americans. He lets Menendez free as a little favor, and under calmer circumstances they might have had a nice chat about their aligned interests, but Raul only has one thing on his mind. We actually get to play as Raul Menendez, and we are a whirlwind of bloodlust and righteous rage with one goal: get to Josefina. I wish Raul's bond with his sister was shown to us in greater detail than just family. I guess the calm scene at the beginning was meant to do this, but I don't think this alone is strong enough to really sell Raul's rampage. You could argue that it's the opposite. The rampage is meant to sell his bond with Josefina, but this doesn't really land, since Josefina has no character whatsoever. She has no proper dialogue to show off her personality, and she doesn't really do anything, so it's hard not to just see her as a device to develop Raul. Don't get me wrong, on a visceral level this sequence is still fantastic. There really hasn't been something like this in a COD game, where a character's emotional state impacts gameplay so brazenly, but Raul's anger is red hot. The color filter, occasional slow-mo when we slice a motherfucker, and lack of a HUD give a sense of tunnel vision as we barrel our way back to the house. We reach the hallway outside the bedroom, coming face to face with the Americans, some familiar faces among them. Another man stops us, and we wrestle with him, but then... we see it. Woods had no idea Menendez's sister was in that room, but when he saw Menendez, he was overcome with rage. Menendez tortured his team to death, one by one, and left Woods with their remains. Of course Woods would lose his shit, but that's an explanation, not an excuse, and Woods knows it. The events of that day weigh heavily on him, even now. This scene defines Menendez. It defines the cycle of revenge that has plagued his life. For grievances dealt toward him from an early age, he lashed out against his enemies, who threw the heat right back at him. It escalated, burning through everything Menendez treasured: his people, his father, and now his sister. Of course, Menendez himself made it out with his life, but the need for revenge is now the only thing binding him to this earth.
What happened, Hudson? Where's Menendez?
That's him, in a body bag.
Are you sure about that?
So, the ball is in Menendez's court now. What does he do? Well, the flashes in Section's mind are becoming more lucid, and Section has a suspicion. Woods said Alex Mason was just killed randomly by some maniac, but little David Mason was kidnapped the day his father died. And that face? There's no mistaking it. That was Menendez. The year is 1989. The United States' relationship with Manuel Noriega has soured, and it doesn't help that Menendez has been spotted in Panama talking with him.
Manuel Noriega, hereforth known as Objective False Prophet.
Woods, Mason, and company have been sent to capture Noriega and make him look like a pervert or something, so the people of Panama aren't motivated to try rescue him, I think. Sounds pretty weird, but it's a
standard grab and smear operation.
Apparently. The grab and smear will be covered by a full-scale invasion of Panama. Simple plan with the full support of the military. Should be an easy one, but something is off, especially Hudson on comms, who's just not acting like himself. Well, the invasion's already begun, so no time for doubts. Together with Mason, we capture Noriega, and it looks like we're done here, but then we call Hudson. Change of plan. Turns out Noriega has intel on an important target, so instead we're doing a prisoner exchange.
What's more important than Objective False Prophet?
You have to trust me, Mason. You have to.
Well, Woods and Mason are soldiers. It's not their place to question orders. Mason splits off from Woods and Noriega, who take a sniper's nest over the exchange area. It's here that Hudson reveals who the target is. Raul Menendez. He tells Woods to shoot. The circumstances are certainly fishy. Comms have been on the fritz the whole time, the grab and smear became something completely different, and now Woods is being told to kill the prisoner they came here for. But what is Woods meant to do? Soldiers don't question orders. This should be a moment of bliss for Woods. The man who caused him so much pain is dead, but Woods can't shake off a dreadful feeling, and Noriega's smug face just confirms it. He runs towards the body, anxiety growing in his chest, and he pulls off the bag, revealing the corpse of Alex Mason. Woods has been completely tricked, and now he's at the mercy of Raul Menendez. You know, this really shocked me when I played this level for the first time. As someone who played Black Ops 1 first, Alex Mason came across to me as unkillable. Not in the invincible Superman kind of way, but he was a survivor. He withstood Soviet brainwashing, POW camps, and countless scenes of brutal combat. So seeing him dead on the floor, used as mere fodder for Menendez's revenge plot, it shook me to the core. And worst of all, he got me to pull the trigger. Hudson and David had been kidnapped shortly before the invasion began, and now they're joined by Woods and the corpse of Alex Mason.
Now one more must die. You, Woods, or David.
I gotta hand it to Treyarch. This decision took some serious cojones. Even though Hudson was significantly less cool in this game, it's a real shame to see such an icon go out like this. Two of Black Ops' major characters have just been wiped out within moments of one another, and they didn't even get to go out with dignity. If Menendez hadn't received proper development and build-up, this scene might have felt like a cheap way to generate drama, but he sure did receive that build-up. His persistence, his cleverness, and his hatred, they were laid out for us to see, and as a result we have one of the most memorable and emotional scenes in the entire series.
Your life will be consumed by absolute loss.
Much like how Black Ops 1 was about Viktor Reznov, Black Ops 2 is about Raul Menendez, and there are some obvious parallels. They are men who have been wronged so deeply that the quest for revenge completely consumed them. This is the second Black Ops game in a row where a main character has a revenge motive, so what gives? Is Treyarch lazy? Are they out of ideas? I don't think so. Even if the goal is sort of the same, these characters have very different relationships with revenge. Reznov's desire for revenge largely stems from one event, Dragovich's betrayal in Siberia. It was a singular event that decided the rest of his life. But Menendez, revenge is his life. He had been swept up in a life of misery, and anger festered within him. His family were taken from him one by one, leaving him to suffer alone. It's really no wonder that Reznov's idea of revenge is simple. He wants his betrayers dead. But for Menendez, death is a mercy. He could easily finish off Woods and David Mason right here, but
The dead don't suffer. That's why you and I are still here.
Menendez has a real eye for an eye approach. He wants to scar his enemies in the same way he has been scarred, to evoke in Woods and David Mason the same loss he has felt. He tells a barely conscious David Mason,
You will suffer with me.
he knows that one day, David will recall tonight's events. On that day, the cycle of revenge will continue, and Menendez will be prepared. It breaks my heart seeing Woods force himself to recount all this to Section. I can't imagine the guilt that must have weighed him down, for being the one to kill his closest friend and the father of the man standing before him. You know, Black Ops 1 had some dark moments, but there was always that kind of action movie camp factor that kept it from getting depressing. Black Ops 2, in contrast, is raw. Characters often reflect, ponder, suffer. We really feel the toll the events of the story have exacted on these people. I'm gonna address a caveat here. Alex Mason doesn't necessarily die in Black Ops 2. If you feel some trickery is afoot, then you can shoot Mason in the leg and he'll show up alive and well in the ending.
Al, this is Dave. Dave,
How you doing?
this is your dad.
I don't think this dampens the emotion of that scene, since there's no immediate confirmation that you just saved Mason, and the other characters are definitely still traumatized. I don't know how many people saved Mason first try, I sure didn't, but I do like that they give you this option. It's a rare chance for you, the player, to engage in intellectual battle with this villainous mastermind. I like this way of implementing multiple endings, as it rewards players who paid attention rather than just laying out some choices on a silver platter. I was gonna go over the rest of the story in detail. With all the chips on the table, we're in 2025 mode till the end, hunting down Menendez. The final act of the story is fine, great even, but Menendez's character really peaked right here, and it would have felt underwhelming to put his best moment in the middle, so I'm gonna speed up, offering commentary where appropriate. The level where we play as Farid, the double agent, is super uncomfortable. They really love showing Menendez off, don't they? Up close and personal too. We've seen the fiery, cocky Menendez plenty, but he's an old man now. Still terrifying, but in a more subdued, sophisticated kind of way. But that anger is still there. Later on, if Farid fails Menendez's test of loyalty, it emerges again, but in a sort of offended manner, like he's a disappointed father. I love this. I get the sense Menendez is actually hurt by this betrayal, and he genuinely can't fathom why someone would side with the Americans, and that lines up perfectly with the kind of single-minded conviction he has. The rest of the campaign doesn't expand on his character all that much, it just focuses on the aftershock of his plans. The only scene of note is when we capture him, letting Section and Menendez talk face-to-face after many years, but it's disappointingly short since he breaks out soon after. Long story short, he creates more havoc around the world, leading us on a goose chase, and then we get to right here. The final choice of the campaign. Menendez's life is in your hands. You could kill him. You could end the cycle of revenge right here. Or, you could do what he did to you. Usually, the spare option in a video game is an act of mercy, but remember,
The dead don't suffer.
Menendez even eggs you on to pull the trigger, ostensibly to make him a martyr for Cordestia, but I think he knows he has nothing to live for anymore. He lost. It's the right time for him to go. I find it hard to finish this game feeling triumphant. In other COD games, there's this sense of mission accomplished at the end, whether it's a simple good guys killed bad guys ending or something more somber, but the events of Black Ops 2 never should have happened. A couple of human beings found themselves in a personal feud, did some terrible fucked up things to each other, and they became bound by suffering. There's no honor in this ending. Section inherited this mess, and he's doing his duty in mopping it up. None of the possible endings are very favorable for Menendez because it's clear that he's lost the will to live. Canonically, you do kill him, and, you know, he dies, but not without letting all 2 billion Cordestia members know and starting mass riots around the globe. If you spare him and make the right choices to not let him break out of prison, he straight up goes insane, mocked on television and not allowed to die on his own terms. But if he does break out of prison, he deals with one item of unfinished business.
Started thinking we were gonna make it.
I guess Menendez has decided Woods served his time. Their conversation is pretty short. Not much drama or fanfare here. The sheer hatred between these two notwithstanding, they don't have a reason to fight or suffer anymore. Menendez confronts Woods about his sister one last time.
You took her from me.
What'd you learn from that?
It seems Menendez is giving Woods a final chance to apologize, but Woods throws it back at his face. This line seems like a petty insult to Josefina on first listen, but I think Woods is asking Menendez to acknowledge his own guilt for once. Woods never forgot the innocent blood on his hands. In other words, he's self-aware. It would be easy to just say sorry, but where's Menendez's apology? It's a two-way street. Menendez got dealt a shitty hand, but it was his own choice to respond in the violent way he did. Maybe in a more idealistic game, Menendez would have had some kind of epiphany. Maybe they would have come to some kind of understanding in their final moments, but this just isn't that kind of game. As far as Menendez is concerned, this conversation is over. Both of them are ready to go, so Menendez does the honors, first for Woods, putting his sister's pendant to use one last time, and then for himself, finding Josefina's grave and going out the same way she did. This was the ending I got playing the game for the first time. Back then I didn't get all the nuances on account of being 12, but it leaves a real impression. It's an unsatisfying ending, no one walks away happy, but I love it all the same because that's the exact kind of ending that fits this game like a glove. But why did I do all this? Why did I go through the trouble of synopsizing the plot when this is a character analysis? Well, I consider Menendez to be the best villain in the series because this story could not exist without him. Call of Duty campaigns are by and large stories about war, and more often than not, the thrills of war, but Black Ops 2 is first and foremost about suffering. Treyarch had to give us this charismatic, devious, and terribly human antagonist and show the hell he went through to become that way. They had to. Otherwise, this story and the sobering, bitter tone it went for wouldn't have worked. Overall, I wouldn't say Black Ops 2 is as batshit insane as the first one, but taking the campaign in this direction was still a huge risk, and it's a statement to Treyarch's bravery and willingness to experiment with the Call of Duty formula. So whenever you find yourself replaying Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Thank Menendez. He's the horribly tragic, fucked up glue holding all this together. If you're not tired of my voice yet, check out my full start to finish Black Ops 1 retrospective. Let me know in the comments what you think, subscribe, yada yada. Thanks for getting this far. Bye.